I could hit at 7k, a really fast K, and then hurt them before they even got to the last lap. When I broke the world records at the various distances that I did, and they lasted for 12 years, that meant a lot to me, because it meant that for 12 years I was the fastest woman.
Well, a very warm welcome to you to this latest Now Legends series for athleticsweekly.com. My name's Tim Hutchings. I am absolutely delighted to have literally another legend sitting next to me now. We're in a central London office. She's just flown in from Spain. It is, of course, the one and only Liz McColgan, winner of New York, London, Tokyo marathons, world champion famously in the sweltering heat of Tokyo in 1991. British record holder galore on many surfaces, but Liz was the complete runner. She was a great cross-country runner, great track runner, amazing road runner, and one of the toughs of the track, which is why I admire her so much. She used to push through barriers that many others would have been stopped by. Liz, welcome on board. Just flown in from Spain, where it was a nice cool 37 or something.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been living in Qatar for 13 years and it's 44, 45 degrees, so it was quite nice to go and take 10 days out holiday and meet up with my younger kids and spend some time in Spain. But I found the 35-degree heat, the sun was like a lot stronger than in Qatar, and I went for a run yesterday and did the mistake of not putting any sunscreen on, so I've just completely burnt. But you live and learn by your mistakes.
But when it's 45 in Qatar, do you still go out for runs in that?
I do, but because we're in Qatar, I don't think the ultraviolet light is as strong. Like when you're in Spain, the sun is like really, really strong. I suppose there's a lot of sand in the air where I am. So yeah, we still go out and run. It's not so much the heat, it's the humidity just now. It's really, really tough. I went for a 8k run before I left, and it just brought back all those hard memories of Tokyo, because it was so tough just to jog, 8k in there.
Liz, your whole life has been running. You're brought up in Dundee, joined the local athletics club, Dundee Hawkhill, is it?
Hawkhill Harriers, yeah.
Hawkhill Harriers. And pretty much discovered your talent by the age of 18. You were winning stuff and took that commonly trod journey out to the States, to university in the States.
Yeah, I started running when I was 12. Wasn't the best. Obviously, Scotland had an awful lot of really good runners. We had Yvonne Murray, Lynn McDougall, so Andrew Everett. We've always had a big history of endurance runners in Scotland. Even today, we've got a great history of endurance runners, both men and women. But in my day, I'd be making Scottish schools teams, maybe like 4th or 5th player on it. So I wasn't that outstanding best when I was younger. It took me a bit of time to grow into my athletics. I was a bit of a sort of an overweight child as well, just through bad eating and things like that. So it took me a good 4 or 5 years to get on top of that and train hard. And then when I got to sort of 17, 18, I started to respond to the training that I was doing. And then I got offered a scholarship to go to the University of Rexburg, Idaho. I had to go to a junior college because I didn't have the qualifications to get into a 4-year school, which was Division 2. So I went for a year in Idaho. It was a bit of an eye-opener because it was a Mormon school and I didn't know what Mormons were. So that was a bit of a shocker going there and, not able to dictate.
You didn't know what you were going to?
I didn't know what I was going to. My coaches said to my parents, you need to let her go. There's nothing in Dundee. I was working in a jute mill at the time. I was 17 going on 18. I was getting £23.50 on a YTS scheme. I was training at 5:30 in the morning and meeting Harry Bennett, my coach, at 5:30 at night. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me to actually train and get races and things like that. So I took up the opportunity. Harry paid my fare to go there with an uncle of mine. And off I went, not knowing anybody, and went to a Mormon school for a year. But I think it was a blessing in disguise because I was solely on my own. I was 17 going on 18. So there were so many restrictions. So I think it actually played to my end game to allow
protected you.
Yeah, to allow me to settle in and whatever. And I won every title that there was, cross-country, road and track, for junior college, which is a 2-year that leads into BYU for a 4-year college. But at the end of my first year, I got highly recruited and I went to the University of Alabama, and then that was a game changer. Met a great coach there who allowed me to realise that, I'm European and my season starts in the summertime. It's not when NC2As or regionals are, which are earlier in the year for the USA state schools. So he really supported me and said, as long as you run NC2A regionals, we'll support you to make sure that you're in shape when you go back home. And it worked out really well for me. So I was there for 3 years, came back home, won my first British championship, which was the first 10k for women.
What year was that?
That was 85. we qualified for the Commonwealth Games in '86. And one of the really silly rules was because no women had run 10K before, they said that if anyone got lapped in the field, they had to stop. So I lapped everybody, apart from the Tooby twins. Remember Angela and Susan Tooby? They were fighting to get their to finish the race because Angela was still on a qualifier for Wales. So she was arguing as she was running. She did finish the race and she did get her time. So she ran the Commonwealth Games that year. But they just didn't expect someone to come back and to run as quick as what I did, which was like, really just the start of my career, really, in '85.
Now, I read that when you won the Commonwealth Games in '86 in Edinburgh in front of the home crowd famously, which is the best place to race in front of a home crowd, I read that in the build-up to that, you were self-coached.
Yeah, because I've always been coached by a guy called Harry Bennett. He coached me since I was 12. And when I went out to the States, I came back for my first summer and we were away to do the Keith Highland Games, which we did as just a fun thing all the time. And he was picking me up in his motorbike and I got a call from his wife saying he had died that morning. So he had a really sudden heart attack while out running. And I never met anybody that would fill his shoes. He was such a role model for me, not only just as a coach, but even as an educator. He used to throw books at me like The Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner, which is like, I don't know how old now, and he just always asked me questions, and I'd go round to his house and his wife would make me cups of tea and they'd be sitting discussing training sessions and things. So he really educated me at a very young age. And I just never had the confidence or the belief that anybody else could help me as much as I knew myself. So I just started coaching myself from then on in. And really up until about '86, really, when I met Grete Waitz, that was the sort of first person that I really did gel with. Got coached by John Anderson for just over a year for a bit, but it just didn't work out. It was a clash of personalities, could I say. And his training just wasn't really suited to me. I know that it worked really well for Dave Moorcroft, but I'm quite a high miles person and I believe what I need to do for me to be at my best. And when I got my silver at the Olympics, I was really disappointed because I felt that I didn't train to where I should have for allowing me to run better, because I didn't feel that I ran as good as what I could have.
That was your silver in Seoul '88.
Yes.
But going back to the '86 Commonwealth Games, going into that, your first major championships, were you confident that you could win, or were you just hoping for a top three? Or
no, I knew. I think as an athlete, you always know when you're on your game, and I trained really well going into the Commonwealth Games. Anna Dane was the fastest lady in the world at that time, and I just felt I felt I could have her, because I was faster over 3K. I had run a really good 1500 in that year, and my training had all borne well for being even better over the 10K. So I was very, very confident. It wasn't a good games for Scotland that year. A couple of our runners like Tom McKean and Yvonne didn't run quite as well. And when I left the actual halls of residence where we were staying as athletes, Andrea Everett's mum Hilda was our team manager. And I knew that Yvonne had just sort of ran earlier in that day, and I knew she didn't run well. So I was trying to avoid any negativity, coming back into the halls of residence, because, you want to keep confident and, keep your own game plan and whatever. And as I walked out, Hilda said to me, well, you're our last hope. And I just felt like the weight of the world on my shoulders as I left. But I was very, very confident that I could win it. Yeah.
So there was Harry, and then there was John Anderson briefly, and then Grete.
Mm-hmm.
But when you started being coached by Grete for those last 4 years of your career, was it 92 to 96, something like that?
It was just under 2 years. Yeah.
What were you learning from Grete then? Because you must have had such a massive reservoir of knowledge yourself.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. She was more a mentor than a coach, and we were very, very similar. It's really, like, the way I met her was weird as well, because we both had the same therapist, Gerard Hartman. And when Gerard was treating Grete, he'd be speaking to Grete about me, and when he's vice versa with me when he's treating me. And he said to me, "You two need to meet, because you just talk the same talk. Everything's like very similar." And we're both like a really stubborn people. And we're like, no, I'm not meeting her. And she's like, no, I'm not meeting her. And so we refused to meet. So Ger had arranged for Grete to have a session and me to get a session after. So when she came out, we had to meet. So we had this sort of enforced meeting put on us, and when we started speaking, we just really clicked, and we went for a coffee and that, and we just discussed my training, and she was saying, oh, you know, this is the mistakes that I did, and her PBs.
But she more or less retired by that.
Yeah, she had retired, but her PBs were within about a second of mine, and she was a very similar runner. You know, she was a strong runner. She was a miles person, and as we sort of developed our friendship, you know, we started meeting. She'd pick me up and she'd drive me up an 800-metre hill and drive me down. And then after we had a sort of coffee one day, she turned around and she said, "This is just silly. Why don't I just coach you?" And I was like, "Yeah, why don't you?" So she brought a bit of different things to me. I didn't do an awful lot of like weights, and I would see what people call plyometrics, circuits and things like that. So she introduced that into me. So I was a lot stronger leg-wise and stuff. Training was very, very similar.
Had she always done that?
Yeah.
I mean, Grete was famous for her consistency. She won, 9 New York marathons, I think? I mean, world cross-country champion. She was an unbelievable runner. One of the sort of standard bearers of women's distance running.
But even a greater person, you know, in person, she was an amazing, amazing person, and she just would share her knowledge. And I think, you know, that's what Harry did with me. When I was a youngster, Harry shared his knowledge with me. So Grete was the similar vein, and I think that's why we got on so well. You know, it wasn't about like, you know, like planning sessions and that. It was discussing things and, you know, why you need to do this, and, you know, what way to run a marathon better and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, she had a lot of experience as well. So, you know, world cross country champion and things like that. So it was really, at that sort of time in my career, it was just really, really good. It was kind of like I went full circle. It was really good to have someone that I could confide in.
Yeah.
Not necessarily tell me what to do, but actually to have a discussion to say, do you think I'm doing this right? Had my back, you know, believed in me. So that was really, really nice.
Has that experience, though, sort of finishing off with Grete, taking you to the next stage of knowledge almost, has that equipped you to be a good coach? Because you're doing quite a lot of mentoring and coaching in back in Doha now.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the whole thing about being a coach or a mentor is learning your sport. And I think throughout the years, I've learned, you know, the hard way through trial and error. I'm not saying that every great coach has to be a great athlete, because they don't, but you do have to delve into your sport and learn the ins and outs of it and what works and what doesn't. And, you know, you only get that from being out in the field and practicing and practicing and practicing. And I just think that from being an elite athlete, it just brings an extra sort of a bow to your arrow, like, you know, it just gives you that extra bit of edge, because a person that hasn't run doesn't know how it feels to be in a cold room for 20 minutes before you're going out to the biggest race in your life, or if you're not feeling confident, how that feels. You know, so you kind of bring a little bit more of the physiology and the mental approach to running that maybe a person that's not actually been a runner doesn't get. But that doesn't mean to say that you're any better or any worse, you know, because you haven't done it. You know, coaching is a very individual thing, and a good coach is someone who believes in their athlete and plans a training schedule or routine around that person to make them the best that they could be, and you learn from that as a coach. You're always learning.
Going back to your own career, I mean, you know, 86 Commonwealth Games gold in Edinburgh sort of kicked things off. You retained that 10,000 title in Auckland 1990, but there was Olympic silver in between. In Seoul at 10,000 meters there was world cross country silver. Then you moved on to the marathons. Which performance stands out for you? Sometimes people say, oh, it was my school's title, my first school's title, or whatever, was 15 or whatever, but you know, looking at that span of your career, as you say, from 12 through into your 30s, what's the one you're most satisfied with?
Do you know, it's hard to say if you're world champion and you're the best at that moment in time. It's hard to say that that's not your favourite moment. I was always time orientated, yeah. So when I broke the world records at the various distances that I did, and they lasted for 12 years, that meant a lot to me, because it meant that for 12 years I was the fastest woman running, you know, half marathon, 10k, 5k on the roads. And so that's a longevity in itself. You know, I was the first woman to break 31 minutes for the 10k, and I know that sounds really slow now because of all the technology that we've got, but back in the day, from what we had on our feet, you know, it was pretty good to be the first woman to do that. But I would say when I broke my world records, they meant so much to me because I was the fastest woman.
Which one
ever.
stands out?
I think the half marathon does because I just had Alish and we went to Japan. I remember saying to my husband at the time, you know what, I really don't care. I'm just like a zombie. I'm so tired. I'm just going to run as hard as I can. And I started the race and I went through the 10K way too fast. It was something like 31:20 or something like that. It was because it was a sort of a flat course anyway. And then I just really suffered over the latter part. And then I got hit by a wheelchair as I went into the stadium.
No.
And I just thought, I had no idea how fast I was running. And because I just was running on, you know, like a zombie, really, to be honest. I was just out of it. I was just pushing and pushing. And then when I finished and saw the time, I was just amazed because it was 67:11 back in those days. And I think that, you know, it was quite a bit off the world record. And I couldn't believe I'd done it because everything in my body was not ready to run a world record that time. And it still stood for 12 years. So, you know, it just convinced me that even though everything's not perfect in every race that you do, it's amazing just what you can do if you put your mind to it.
I've got 67:11, Tokyo 92.
Yeah, it must be 92.
And another thing about your career that a lot of people should be looking at now, top runners now should be looking at, is the fact that you sort of covered everything. You know, you ran 4:01 for 1500. You were quicker than people realise. You ran 4:01 for 1500. You ran 8:34 indoors for 3000. As you say, there weren't many 5000s around. Fantastic 10,000s on the road and the track. So you went through all the gears of a career, and I love that. I like to look at Haile Gebrselassie and Paul Tergat and people like that who, they weren't just road runners. They didn't just emerge on the roads and run fast marathons at the age of 19 or 20. You actually you went through I guess you served your time at all the different distances before you hit that sweet spot at 10,000 and a half.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a kid, I was a cross-country runner as well. You know, I got a silver and a bronze at the World Cross. So, you know, I've ran on all surfaces and I've got medals at all surfaces at world level or Olympic level. But for me, I was always very aware that I wasn't the fastest person to finish. You know, last 400, I would never run a 56 or a 57. I knew that. But what I could do was I could hit at 7K, a really fast K, and then hurt them before they even got to the last lap. So that was my logic. So for me, I really had to work on my lowest, you know, my speed, because like my speed wasn't the best. So I had to work hard. So when I did my 4:01, I ran 64s the whole way from start to finish. I got tripped up from Yvonne with 300 metres to go, but that was by the by. She ran 4:12 or something. I ran 4:1.3 or something in Oslo. But, you know, that's the way I ran. You know, I was a really strong paced runner, but if it was a slow pace, it was very difficult for me to gather that speed up and then sprint like, say, Sonia O'Sullivan or something like that at the end. So, you know, you've always got to work on your weak spot. So it was really, really important for me to do those 1500s, to run those 64s, you know, like from start to finish, even though they hurt. Same with the 3Ks. It was really good to just get the leg turnover. But what I used to do is when I ran that 4:01, I would have done a fartlek in the morning.
You had done a fartlek in the morning?
Yeah.
Why would you do that before a race?
Because I wouldn't back off for just to run a 1500 when I'm focusing on a 10K.
You've always had a close relationship with Asics as a shoe company, and Eilish has maintained that. It's almost like this dynasty of top Scottish runners running in Asics shoes, sound body, sound minds.
Yeah.
How did that start off? What made you choose them as opposed to, you know, and when you're running as well as you were, you could have had one of 10 different shoe companies sponsoring you.
No, I didn't choose them. So when I got pregnant with Alish, I was with Nike and Nike dropped me. And I was very adamant that I was coming back into the sport, but they were like, no woman comes back and be successful.
Weird now, that perception.
Yeah.
And when you've had a baby, you can't come back.
So I'd had Alish and then I did really well. You know, I got sort of third bronze at the World Cross Country 12 weeks after I had Alish. And then I went to the World Championships unsponsored. So I had no sponsor for that whole time.
In 91?
And yeah, prior to going to Tokyo, I had no sponsor. When you go to the village, you've always got all the shoes shops, you know, like Nike, Reebok. They've all got their houses and you go around and you see all the new gear and da-da-da. So we went walking around the village one morning and we went into sort of Nike and we went to Reebok. And then I went into Asics and there was a guy called Nagoshi in Asics. He just came over and he says, "Oh, Liz." And I says, "Oh, you know who I am?" And he goes, yeah, of course I know who you are. You know, you do the 10K heats. And I'm like, yeah. And we're looking at shoes and he says, "Who are you with?" And I says, "No, I've not got a sponsor." So he signed me up there on the spot. And he said to me, "Pick any shoe." And I was like, so for the heats, I wore just training, like my racing flats. So I picked a pair of racing flats and I just wore racing flats. And then I went back and he was at the final and he said, pick a shoe for the final. And I was like, I want these ones. He goes, no, you can't have that one. I think they're like $14.99. They were the cheapest shoe that they had. He says, out of this one here. And I was like, no, I want this one. And the reason I picked it was because it had a little wedge on it. It's kind of, similar to what I'd been training at, and they look good. So I took that shoe, never wore it before, went and ran the 10K in them.
You ran the
Never
World
got a
10
blister.
Championships 10,000 in a brand new
pair
spike.
of spikes. Never got a blister or anything, and they were brilliant. So I became really good friends with Nagoshi, and I even talked to Louise retired and everything. We all send each other messages and things. And for me, Asics really stood up for me at the time, because like there was no guarantee I was going to do anything, and they signed me up. And then they've always been like a family. Like they always put over, like whether you run good or bad, always there for you. Even when I had my injuries, they never dropped me. They stuck with me. And I think that's really important, because it's not always about winning, because an athlete's life is a long lifespan. And you always get ups and downs, like a roller coaster. You could pick up a really bad injury. Like I was out for 2 years before I won London with a knee injury, and they still sponsored me. So when Eilish started running, obviously you've got your Nikes and all that sort of stuff. It was just really nice for me for her to be with a brand that I know will support her and treat her well. They're really family orientated, and they really invest in their athletes well. They're not on a roller coaster of just picking up all the good athletes and then dropping them for every cycle. They tend to keep the people.
As it turns out that most of your career, you've probably been training for the marathon without knowing it. You were doing 100 plus per week, and you moved to marathon quite late in your career. And whether or not you could have stepped to marathon a bit early, you still think that you had unfinished business at 10,000 meters on the track, 25 laps. I mean, I only ran 3 or 4 10,000. I didn't have the right mentality for it, but you loved it.
Yeah, I really did. And I used to always say to even people now, I think I trained like a Kenyan without really knowing it, for the type of runner that I was. But I just love the challenge of 10,000 meters, because it is challenging, because 25 laps is a mental challenge as well as a physical. And, and as I said earlier, like, you've got to sort of listen to people breathing, and you're counting the laps, and then you're sort of trying to not, sort of maneuver yourself in the right position to cover anything. And so there's a lot to think about. You're not just like trotting around it. You've got a lot in your head going on. Well, I did. And I just used to love it. I just used to love the challenge of it.
So Alish, your daughter, now holds the British record for the half marathon. She's run 65 minutes. She's engaged to Mike Rimmer, who was a 1:43 800-meter runner, and they're a great pairing. Are you very involved in Ailish's career? She's been developing this legendary status herself for the last 6 or 8 years. But do you speak to her often?
Oh yeah, I still talk to Eilish like near enough every day, but I'm not sitting dictating to her what to do now, because Eilish has learnt from me, and I've got the confidence to know that Michael and her are able to design the program for Alish. But we still do a lot of discussion. So I think I'm more mentor, like Grete was with me. I'll sit there and I'll say, well, I think that you should do this or do that, and we'll chat about it. And if she's like struggling with something, we discuss it. Eilish is a mature woman. She's a mature athlete. She doesn't need mum to tell her what to do all the time. She's got her own ideas and her own. She's also a qualified coach herself now. She's did all her qualifications. So yeah, she's got her own ideas on what makes her tick and what makes her stronger.
So running has been through your life from the age of 12 onwards, right up till the present day. You still run most days. You as you say, you're sort of mentor to Alish. But your life has moved on. 13 years ago, you moved to Doha, to Qatar, to the sweltering heat there for the summer months at least. Tell us how that came about.
Really, it was just circumstances. I had a really bad divorce. I had to kind of reinvent myself, which I'd done. And I went out to Doha because I got offered a job, if I'm honest. And that's why I went. Back in the day when you were a coach, you didn't get paid. Like even like Scottish Athletics, when I was chairperson for 4 years, it was voluntary. I've never been paid in the UK as a coach. If you went to GB teams, it was always voluntary and things like that as a coach. So I needed to go and get a job, which I'd done. And then when I've been out there, I've just met some really wonderful people, and been involved in some great projects. And it's been good for me.
So you're a busy woman. You're sort of mentoring Alish. You're setting up or working strongly with the authorities in Doha to develop this women's running program, track and field program. You've got 5 kids. I mean, how do you find the time for yourself?
Oh, my kids aren't kids anymore. They're all pretty much adult, eh? Like Orla's my youngest, and she's now 19 and studying at university. Kieran's 21, Eamon 23, Martin 25, Eilish 34. So they're all independent young people, which is great, which I love because I get to spend really good quality time with them now, and they're absolutely amazing. Not just Alish, but I've got 5 amazing kids. I've been very, very blessed to have the kids that I've got, and they've all did really well for themselves, and for me, that's the next stage of my life. I just like to see them happy and support them, and it's life's good just now.
There's the manic years behind you. I think you've earned this relaxed period of your life.
I hope so, anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure, Liz. Thanks so much.
Thanks
so much. And good luck with what's coming.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you very much.